Sergeant Emma Torres had heard every joke there was about women in the military. After 12 years of service, the words barely stung anymore, but that didn't make them right. Fort Polk sat in the heart of Louisiana, surrounded by thick forests and swampland that the Army used for jungle warfare training. The humidity was brutal, even in October. Mosquitoes were everywhere, and the terrain was unforgiving, with tangled vines, hidden sinkholes, and water moccasins that could kill you if you weren't careful. Emma knew every inch of these training grounds. She had been teaching marksmanship and survival skills here for 3 years, ever since she'd requested a transfer from active combat duty. She was good at her job, maybe the best instructor on the base. But you wouldn't know it from the way some people treated her. "Hey, Sergeant Torres," called out Private Danny Freeman as Emma walked past the shooting range that Tuesday morning. "My girlfriend wants to know where you got your nail polish, says it's a real pretty shade." The men around him laughed. Emma glanced at her short, unpolished nails and kept walking. Freeman was 19, fresh out of basic training, and thought he was funny. "Aw, come on, Sergeant," Freeman continued. "Can't you take a joke? You're supposed to have a sense of humor." Emma stopped and turned around. Freeman stood with 3 other young privates, all grinning like they'd done something clever. "Private Freeman," Emma said calmly, "I'd be happy to discuss humor with you after you qualify on the rifle range. So far, you've failed twice. Maybe spend less time on jokes and more time learning to shoot straight." Freeman's smile faded. His friends snickered, but now the joke was on him. Emma continued to the training office, where she found Captain Robert Hayes reviewing schedules. Hayes was in his 40s, a career officer who ran the training program. He looked up when Emma entered. "Torres," he said, "I'm assigning next week's jungle survival course. I'm putting you on administrative duty." Emma frowned. "Sir, I always lead the jungle course. It's my specialty." "I know, but I'm getting complaints." "What kind of complaints?" Hayes shifted uncomfortably. "Some of the men feel that having a female instructor for jungle warfare sends the wrong message. They think it's not realistic." Emma felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest. "Not realistic? Sir, I've done 3 tours in combat zones. I've led soldiers through actual jungles in actual combat. These privates have barely been in the field." "I understand, Torres, but I have to consider morale. If the men don't respect their instructor, they won't learn." "They don't respect me because they're not required to," Emma said, keeping her voice level. "You're letting them dismiss me without consequence." Hayes stood up, his expression hardening. "I'm making a command decision, Sergeant. You'll handle administrative duties next week. Sergeant Collins will lead the jungle course." "Collins barely knows the difference between a water moccasin and a garden snake," Emma said. "That's enough, Sergeant," Hayes said sharply. "Dismissed." Emma left the office, her hands clenched into fists. 12 years. 12 years of proving herself, and she was still being pushed aside because some boys didn't think a woman belonged in the field. She walked to the edge of the base, where the manicured lawns gave way to thick forest. The jungle training grounds stretched for miles beyond the fence, a maze of trails, swamps, and dense vegetation. Emma had walked every path, memorized every landmark, knew every danger. And now she was being told to sit at a desk, while someone less qualified did her job. That evening, Emma sat in the small house she rented in Leesville, the town just outside Fort Polk. It was a quiet place, just her and a cat she'd adopted from the local shelter. She looked at the framed photo on her mantel, the only decoration in the sparse living room. The photo showed her in combat gear, standing with her unit in a real jungle half a world away. She was younger then, her face harder, her eyes more distant. That was before the ambush, before she'd lost 3 members of her squad in a firefight that still haunted her dreams. That was why she'd requested the transfer to training duty. She'd needed a break from combat, from the constant fear and loss. But she'd also thought she could make a difference here, teaching the next generation how to survive. Instead, she was being sidelined. Emma's phone rang. It was her old friend, Master Sergeant Linda Cho, who worked in base operations. "Emma, you okay?" Linda asked. "I heard about Hayes taking you off the jungle course." "Word travels fast," Emma said. "It always does. Listen, that's garbage. You're the best instructor we have." "Try telling that to Freeman and his buddies. They think I'm here to serve them coffee." Linda sighed. "You want me to talk to Hayes? I can put in a word." No, Emma said. It won't help. He's already made up his mind. So what are you going to do? Emma looked at the photo again at the faces of the soldiers she'd served with. Some of them were dead now, others had moved on, but they'd all trusted her. They'd known what she was capable of. I'm going to do my job, Emma said quietly, and when the moment comes, I'll prove them all wrong. She just didn't know yet how soon that moment would arrive. The next morning, Emma reported for administrative duty as ordered. She spent the day filing paperwork, answering phones, and watching through the window as Sergeant Collins prepared to take 30 recruits into the jungle for a 5-day survival course. Collins was a decent enough soldier, but he was lazy about details. Emma watched him check his gear with half the attention the task required. She saw him skip parts of the safety briefing. She noticed him looking at a map that was 3 years out of date. You should say something, Linda whispered, passing by Emma's desk with a stack of files. I'm on administrative duty, remember, Emma said bitterly. I'm not qualified to have an opinion. The recruits gathered in the yard, excited and nervous. Emma recognized most of them. Private Freeman was there, still cocky. A few others who had made jokes about her, but also some good kids who were just trying to learn. Emma felt a knot of worry in her stomach. The jungle training grounds were dangerous even when everything went right, with an instructor who wasn't prepared, who didn't know the terrain like he should. She pushed the thought away. Collins was a sergeant. He'd done this before. It would be fine. Probably. She watched as the group marched toward the tree line, their voices fatting as they disappeared into the thick vegetation. The jungle swallowed them up, and the base grew quiet. Emma tried to focus on her paperwork, but the knot in her stomach wouldn't go away. Something felt wrong. She just didn't know yet how right her instincts were. By midnight, she would know. By midnight, the screams would start, and Emma Torres would face a choice that would change everything. 3 days passed without incident. Emma worked her administrative duties, filing reports and trying not to think about the jungle course she should have been leading. On the 4th day, everything went wrong. Emma was in the training office when the radio crackled to life. It was supposed to be Sergeant Collins checking in for his daily status report. Instead, the voice that came through was younger, panicked. Base, this is Private Morrison from the Jungle Training Group. We have an emergency. Repeat, we have an emergency. Emma grabbed the radio before anyone else could react. Morrison, this is Sergeant Torres. What's your situation? It's Sergeant Collins, ma'am. He fell. We were crossing a ravine and the rope broke. He fell about 30 feet into water. We got him out, but he's unconscious. His leg is broken bad and he's bleeding. We need immediate medical evacuation. Emma's mind raced. What's your location? I'm not sure, ma'am. We're somewhere near the eastern sector, I think. There's a waterfall nearby. The map we have doesn't match what we're seeing. Emma closed her eyes. She knew exactly where they were. The eastern ravines were the most dangerous part of the training grounds, with unstable terrain and water levels that changed rapidly. And Morrison was right. The maps had changed when flooding 2 years ago altered the landscape. She knew this because she'd personally surveyed the new terrain and updated the maps. Maps that apparently Collins hadn't bothered to use. Captain Hayes burst into the office. What's going on? Emma quickly explained the situation. Hayes's face went pale. How many recruits are out there? 30, sir, plus Collins, who's seriously injured. Hayes grabbed the radio. Morrison, this is Captain Hayes. Can you give me any landmarks? Anything that might help us locate you? Sir, there's the waterfall and some really thick bamboo-like plants. We can see a ridge to the north, but it's getting dark soon and we don't know which way to go. Sergeant Collins had the GPS unit and it got smashed in the fall. Emma stepped forward. Sir, I know where they are. The eastern ravine with a waterfall can only be Sector 7E. I can lead a rescue team directly to them. Hayes looked at her, then at the map on the wall. Are you sure? Absolutely sure, sir. I surveyed that area myself 2 years ago. Hayes hesitated. Emma could see him thinking, weighing his options, his pride against the safety of 30 soldiers. Sir, Emma said urgently, Collins needs medical attention now. Those recruits are scared and it's getting dark. In the dark, they might panic and scatter. If they leave that position, we might not find them for days. And that part of the jungle has water moccasins, wild boar, and flash flood risks. We need to move now. Hayes made his decision. Okay, Tors, you'll lead the rescue team. Take whoever you need. I'll alert medical to prepare for casualties. Emma was already moving. Linda, she called out. Linda appeared instantly. Get me 4 soldiers who know the jungle, full medical gear. We leave in 15 minutes. On it, Linda said, running. Emma went to the equipment room and started gathering what she needed. Her rifle, cleaned and maintained obsessively even though she hadn't used it in months. Night vision goggles, first aid supplies, rope, emergency flares, water purification tablets, everything they might need. Her hands were steady as she worked. This was familiar. This was what she'd trained for her entire adult life. Private Freeman appeared at the door. Sergeant Tors, I heard what happened. That's my unit out there. Please let me come with you. Emma looked at him. The cocky 19-year-old was gone. In his place was a scared kid worried about his friends. Can you follow orders without question? Emma asked. Yes, ma'am. Can you keep up if we have to run? Yes, ma'am. Then gear up, you have 10 minutes. Linda returned with 3 more soldiers. Corporal James Wright, a medic, Specialist Sarah Chen, who knew the jungle well, and Sergeant Miguel Santos, strong and reliable. They assembled in the yard as the sun began to set. Emma spread a map on the hood of a Humvee. Here's the situation, she said, her voice calm and authoritative. We have 30 recruits and 1 seriously injured instructor at this location. She pointed to a spot on the map. It's approximately 8 miles from here through difficult terrain. We'll follow this route, which is the fastest path that avoids the worst swamps. She traced her finger along a route she'd memorized years ago. We'll reach them in approximately 3 hours if we maintain good pace. Wright, you'll handle medical care for Collins. Chen and Santos, you'll help me organize the recruits for the march back. Freeman, you'll stay with your unit and keep morale up. Everyone understand. They all nodded. One more thing, Emma said, looking each of them in the eye. That jungle is dangerous at night. Stay together. Follow my lead exactly. Don't take shortcuts. Don't wander off. I've been in real combat, and I'm telling you that this is just as serious. Are we clear? Clear, ma'am, they chorused. Then let's move. They entered the jungle as the last light faded from the sky. Emma switched on her night vision goggles and led the way, moving confidently through terrain that would have confused most people even in daylight. Behind her, she could hear the team keeping pace. Freeman was breathing hard but staying close. The others moved professionally, trusting her leadership. An hour in, they heard the first sounds. Distant voices echoing through the trees, the recruits calling for help. That's them, Chen whispered. Still about 2 miles away, Emma said. Their voices are carrying through the ravine. Let's pick up the pace. They moved faster, Emma navigating around sinkholes and patches of thick mud that would have slowed them down. She ducked under low-hanging vines, stepped over fallen logs, and waded through shallow streams, always moving toward those distant voices. Then the voices changed. The calls for help became screams. Emma's blood ran cold. She'd heard screams like that before in combat. That was the sound of pure terror. Double time, she ordered, breaking into a run. The team raced through the jungle, branches whipping at their faces. The screams continued, high-pitched and desperate, multiple voices all crying out in fear. What's happening? Freeman gasped as they ran. I don't know, Emma said, but we're about to find out. They burst through a thick stand of bamboo and emerged at the edge of the ravine. Below them, in a small clearing near the waterfall, Emma could see the recruits huddled together in the gathering darkness. And surrounding them, moving closer through the shadows, were at least a dozen wild boar. The feral pigs were massive, several 100 pounds each, with sharp tusks that could gore a person to death. They were normally shy of humans, but something had agitated them. Maybe the blood from Collins's injury. Maybe the recruits had accidentally gotten between a sow and her piglets. Either way, the boar were closing in, and the terrified recruits had nowhere to go. Behind them was the ravine. In front of them were the animals. The screams filled the jungle, echoing off the rocks and trees. Emma raised her rifle and chambered around. Everyone stay here, she ordered her team. Cover me. And then she started down the slope toward the screams, toward the danger, toward the soldiers who needed her. Just like she'd always done. Emma moved down the slope with controlled speed, her rifle ready. The screaming continued below, mixing with the aggressive grunts of the wild boar. Sergeant Tors, wait, Santos called from behind her. But Emma didn't wait. 30 soldiers were in danger. Every second counted. She reached the bottom of the ravine and took in the scene with a trained eye. The recruits were pressed against the rocky wall near the waterfall, their faces white with terror in the fading light. Sergeant Collins lay unconscious on a makeshift stretcher, his leg badly broken and bleeding. The boar had formed a loose semicircle about 20 yards from the recruits. Emma counted 14 of them, including a massive male that had to weigh 500 pounds. They were agitated, pawing the ground, tossing their heads. Any moment one of them would charge. When wild boar charged, people died. It was that simple. Emma stepped between the animals and the recruits. She raised her rifle and fired a single shot into the air. The crack of the rifle echoed through the jungle like thunder. Several of the smaller boar startled and backed away, but the big male barely flinched. He turned his massive head toward Emma, his small eyes glinting in the twilight. "Ma'am, get back," one of the recruits shouted. "They'll kill you." Emma ignored him. She had faced worse than wild animals. She had faced enemy combatants, improvised explosives, and situations where death seemed certain. A group of wild pigs, however dangerous, didn't frighten her. What frightened her was failing the soldiers behind her. Emma fired again, this time aiming just in front of the big male. Dirt and leaves exploded near his feet. The boar snorted and took a step back, but didn't run. Behind Emma, her rescue team reached the bottom of the slope. Santos and Chen spread out, creating a line between the boar and the recruits. Freeman ran to his fellow soldiers, immediately moving to help with Collins. Wright, the medic, called out, "Sergeant, I need to assess the injured." "Not yet," Emma said, her eyes never leaving the big boar. "Not until these animals back off." The boar pawed the ground. He was the alpha, Emma realized. He wouldn't retreat easily. If she showed weakness, if she ran, he would charge. And once he charged, the others would follow. Emma had seconds to make a decision. She could keep shooting near them, hopping to scare them off. But that might take too long, and Collins needed medical attention immediately. Or she could shoot the big male, take him down, and the others would likely scatter. But Emma had never liked killing animals. Even in survival situations, she only killed when absolutely necessary. There was a third option, riskier but cleaner. Emma lowered her rifle and pulled a flare from her belt. She struck it against the ignition strip, and it burst into brilliant red light and thick smoke. Then she threw it directly at the big boar. The flare landed right in front of the animal, spraying sparks and producing a sharp, acrid smoke. The boar squealed, a sound of surprise rather than pain, and bolted backward. The sudden movement and the unfamiliar fire spooked the other boar. They turned and crashed back into the jungle, crashing through the underbrush. In 10 seconds, they were gone. Emma let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Behind her, someone started clapping. Then another person joined in. Soon, all the conscious recruits were applauding. "That's enough," Emma said sharply. "Right, get to Collins now. Chen, I need a perimeter check. Make sure those boar are really gone and there aren't any other threats. Santos, start organizing these recruits. I want a head count and status report on everyone." Her team moved instantly, each person knowing exactly what to do. The recruits, seeing real leadership in action, started to settle down. Their panic began to fade, replaced by the relief of being rescued. Emma knelt beside Collins. The sergeant was pale and sweating, drifting in and out of consciousness. His right leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and his pants were soaked with blood. Wright was already setting up an IV line. "He's lost a lot of blood. The break is bad, probably compound fracture. He needs to be in surgery soon." "How long can he wait?" Emma asked. 2 hours, maybe 3. After that, Wright shook his head. Emma did the math. 3 hours back to base, moving carefully with an injured man and 30 exhausted recruits in the dark. They would be cutting it very close. "We need to move fast," Emma said. "Can he handle a quick evacuation?" "He'll have to," Wright said, working to stabilize the leg. Emma turned to the recruits. Private Morrison, who had made the radio call, stepped forward. He was about 20 with scared eyes but a steady voice. "Ma'am, I'm sorry we got into this situation. Sergeant Collins said we should take a shortcut. Some of us questioned it, but he insisted. Then the rope failed and—" "Save the explanations for the debriefing," Emma said, not unkindly. Right now, I need everyone ready to march. It's 8 miles back to base through jungle at night. It's going to be hard, but I'll get you home. Understood. Yes, ma'am, Morrison said. Emma raised her voice so all the recruits could hear. Listen up, we're moving out in 5 minutes. You'll march in single file. Stay close to the person in front of you. No talking except for emergencies. No wandering off for any reason. If you need to stop, you call out and we all stop together. We move as one unit. I've done night marches through worse terrain than this, and I promise you if you follow my orders exactly, we'll all make it home. But I need your complete trust and obedience. Can you give me that? Yes, ma'am, they shouted in unison. These weren't the dismissive, joking voices Emma had heard around base. These were soldiers who had just learned what real leadership looked like. Freeman approached her quietly. Sergeant Torres, I just want to say, I'm sorry for the things I said, the way I acted. You're the best soldier I've ever seen. Emma looked at him. Freeman, you can apologize later by being a better soldier. Right now, I need you to help carry Collins's stretcher. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Within 5 minutes, they were organized. Santos and Freeman carried Collins on the stretcher. Chen took point with Emma. The recruits formed a line between them. Wright brought up the rear, making sure no one fell behind. Emma led them into the jungle, her night vision goggles turning the darkness into shades of green. She moved steadily, choosing the safest path, calling out warnings about obstacles. Route across the path in 3 steps, step high, shallow water ahead, watch for slippery rocks. Vine at head height, duck down. The recruits followed her instructions exactly. They had learned their lesson. When Emma Torres spoke, you listened. 2 hours into the march, it started to rain. Not a gentle rain, but a Louisiana downpour that turned the jungle floor into mud and made every step treacherous. Keep moving, Emma called out. Watch your footing, but don't stop. A recruit near the middle of the line slipped and fell. The person behind him helped him up immediately. They kept moving. Emma's legs burned. Her shoulders ached from carrying her gear. Rain poured down her face, making it hard to see even with the night vision goggles. But she kept going, kept leading, kept moving her soldiers towards safety. Because that's what she did. That's what she'd always done. 3 hours and 40 minutes after they started, Emma saw the lights of Fort Polk through the trees. They had made it. Medical teams were waiting. They rushed forward and took Collins, loading him into an ambulance that sped away with sirens blaring. The recruits were checked for injuries, given water and blankets, and led to the medical building for evaluation. Emma stood in the rain, watching to make sure every single soldier was accounted for and safe. Only when the last recruit was inside did she allow herself to relax. Captain Hayes approached her, an umbrella over his head. He offered to share it, but Emma shook her head. She was already soaked through. Torres, Hayes said quietly, you saved 30 lives tonight. Just doing my job, sir, Emma said. No, Hayes said. You did a lot more than your job. You proved me wrong. I should have listened to you. I should have never taken you off that course. Emma looked at him. Yes, sir, you should have. Hayes nodded slowly. It won't happen again, you have my word. Emma was too tired to feel vindicated. She just felt grateful that everyone had survived. She walked to her truck and drove home through the rain, her hands steady on the wheel despite her exhaustion. When she got home, she took a hot shower, changed into dry clothes, and sat in her living room with her cat purring in her lap. Tomorrow people would talk. Tomorrow the story would spread. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight, Emma just felt the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. She had heard the screams. She had answered with her rifle and her courage, and she had brought everyone home. Emma woke the next morning to her phone ringing constantly. She ignored it for a while, but eventually checked her messages. 17 missed calls, dozens of text messages, even a few emails. The story had spread faster than she'd expected. She got dressed and drove to the base, preparing herself for whatever came next. She expected maybe a debriefing, possibly a commendation, probably a lot of awkward conversations. What she didn't expect was the crowd waiting at the base entrance. News vans lined the road. Reporters with cameras stood behind the security checkpoint. As Emma's truck approached, several reporters recognized her and started shouting questions. Sergeant Torres, can you comment on last night's rescue? Is it true you faced down a pack of wild boar? How does it feel to be called a hero? Emma kept her eyes forward and drove through the gate. The security guard, usually stern, gave her a respectful nod. At the training office, Captain Hayes was waiting with someone Emma didn't recognize, a woman in her 50s wearing a general's stars. Emma snapped to attention and saluted, "Ma'am." The general returned the salute. "At ease, Sergeant. I'm General Patricia Vance, commanding officer of the Western Training Command. I drove in from Fort Hood this morning specifically to meet you." "Ma'am," Emma said, unsure what else to say. "Captain Hayes has briefed me on everything that happened," General Vance continued. "The failed training exercise, the rescue, and your actions last night. I've also been reviewing your service record. 3 combat tour, 2 Bronze Stars, a Purple Heart, exemplary marks across the board, and yet you were placed on administrative duty." Emma glanced at Hayes, who looked uncomfortable. "It was a personnel decision, ma'am," Hayes said. "I thought." "You thought wrong," General Vance said flatly. "Sergeant Torres is exactly the kind of instructor we need, the kind of soldier we need to be promoting, not sidelining." She turned back to Emma. "I'm here to offer you a position at Fort Benning, helping develop the new integrated combat training program. We're redesigning how we prepare soldiers for modern warfare, and we need experienced combat veterans who can lead by example. Interested?" Emma blinked. Fort Benning was one of the premier training facilities in the country. "Ma'am, I'm honored, but I'd need to think about it." "Fair enough," General Vance said. "Take a few days, but I want you to know the Army needs more leaders like you. People who do what's right regardless of recognition. People who put soldiers' lives above politics and ego." After the general left, Emma found herself alone with Hayes. "I meant what I said last night," Hayes said quietly. "I was wrong about you. I let my own biases cloud my judgment. If you decide to stay at Fort Polk instead of taking General Vance's offer, I'd be honored to have you lead the training program here." "And if I get complaints from recruits who don't think a woman should teach them?" Emma asked. "Then those recruits can find somewhere else to train," Hayes said firmly. "You're the best we have, Torres. I won't forget that again." Emma spent the rest of the day in debriefings and medical checks. Sergeant Collins had made it through surgery and would recover, though his training days were over. The recruits were all safe, mostly dealing with exhaustion and minor injuries. Private Freeman found Emma in the afternoon. "Ma'am, the guys and I want to thank you properly. We're planning a dinner tomorrow night. Would you come?" Emma studied him. "Freeman, you don't owe me a dinner." "It's not about owing you," Freeman said. "It's about respect. You showed us what a real soldier looks like, what real leadership looks like. A lot of us have been jerks to you, and we want to make it right." "Being better soldiers makes it right," Emma said, "but I'll come to dinner." That evening, Emma sat in her living room looking at the photo on the mantel. Her old combat unit, those faces from another time. She thought about the soldiers she'd lost, the ones who hadn't made it home. They had trusted her, just like the recruits last night had trusted her. Emma's phone rang. It was Linda. "Hey, hero," Linda said. "How are you holding up?" "Tired," Emma admitted. "Confused. I didn't do this for recognition, you know. I just did what needed to be done." "I know," Linda said, "but sometimes recognition finds you anyway. Are you going to take General Vance's offer?" "I don't know," Emma said. "Part of me wants to, it's a great opportunity, but part of me wants to stay here and finish what I started. Show these recruits what right looks like." "You've already shown them," Linda said. "They'll never forget what you did." After the call, Emma made herself dinner and sat on her small porch, watching the sun set over the Louisiana forest. She thought about the jungle, about the screams, about the moment she'd stood between the boar and the recruits. She hadn't been afraid, she'd been focused, determined, sure of herself and her training. That's what 12 years of service had given her. Not just skills, but the confidence to use them when it mattered most. The next evening, Emma went to the dinner Freeman had organized. She expected maybe a dozen recruits. Instead, she found nearly 100 soldiers gathered in the base rec hall, including many who hadn't been on the rescue mission. They stood and applauded when she entered. Emma felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. Morrison stepped forward and handed her a framed photo. It showed Emma leading the line of recruits through the jungle, her rifle ready, her face determined in the glow of her night vision equipment. Someone had been taking pictures during the rescue. "We wanted you to have this," Morrison said. To remember the night you taught us what courage looks like. Emma looked at the photo, at her own face. She saw strength there and purpose. She saw a soldier doing her job with skill and dedication. She saw someone who belonged exactly where she was. "Thank you," Emma said quietly. Freeman stood up. "Ma'am, I need to say something. A lot of us treated you badly. We made jokes. We questioned your abilities. We didn't give you the respect you deserved. We were wrong, not just wrong, but stupid. You're twice the soldier any of us will ever be, and we're honored to serve with you." "Hear, hear," someone called out, and the room erupted in agreement. Emma held up her hand for quiet. "Listen, all of you, I appreciate this, I really do. But here's what I want you to understand. I didn't save you last night to prove I'm good enough. I saved you because that's what soldiers do for each other. That's what we're supposed to do, regardless of gender or rank or politics. We take care of our own." She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many of them as she could. "Every one of you will face a moment when you have to choose between what's easy and what's right, between what's popular and what's necessary. When that moment comes, I hope you'll remember last night. Not because of what I did, but because of what you learned. That courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing your duty anyway." The room was silent, everyone listening. "And I hope you'll remember that the soldier next to you, whether they're a man or a woman, whether they look like you or not, whether you like them or not, that soldier is your brother or sister in arms. Treat them with respect. Trust them to do their job, because one day your life might depend on them." Emma held up the framed photo. "I'll treasure this, thank you. Now let's eat before the food gets cold." The dinner was good, the conversation better. Emma found herself laughing at jokes, sharing stories, and genuinely enjoying the company of soldiers who now saw her as she truly was. Later that night back home, Emma made her decision about General Vance's offer. She would turn it down. Her place was here at Fort Polk, teaching the next generation of soldiers. Not to prove she was good enough, she already knew she was. But because these soldiers needed what she could teach them. They needed to learn from someone who had faced real danger and made it through. Someone who understood that service meant sacrifice, and that leadership meant putting others first. Emma called General Vance and explained her decision. The general was disappointed but understanding. "Fort Polk is lucky to have you," the general said, "but if you ever change your mind, the offer stands." 3 months later, Emma stood in front of a new group of recruits on their first day of jungle survival training. She looked at their nervous faces, their uncertain expressions. "I'm Sergeant Emma Torres," she said clearly. "Over the next 5 days, I'm going to teach you how to survive in the jungle. Some of you might be wondering if a woman can really teach you what you need to know. Let me answer that question right now." She gestured to the group of soldiers standing nearby, veterans of that night 3 months ago. Freeman, Morrison, and a dozen others who had volunteered to help with the course. These soldiers can tell you what happened when a previous instructor didn't know the terrain well enough. They can tell you about wild boar and panic and screaming in the dark. And they can tell you about the soldier who brought them all home safely. Emma looked back at the new recruits. "I don't need to prove myself to you. I just need you to trust me, follow orders, and learn. Do that, and I promise you'll be better soldiers by the end of this week. Who's ready to begin?" "We are, ma'am," they shouted. Emma smiled, "Then let's get to work." And as she led them toward the jungle, toward the challenges and lessons that waited there, Emma Torres felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The screams in the jungle had led to her rifle's answer. But more than that, they had led to her truth being heard, her worth being recognized, and her place being earned. Not through anger or revenge, but through courage, competence, and an unwavering commitment to doing what was right. That was the real victory. That was the twist that mattered. Emma Torres had proven that the best response to doubt wasn't argument, it was action. And her actions had spoken louder than any words ever could.